Welcome to the show, everyone. My guest today is Mark Savant. So Mark and I got connected about 3-4 weeks ago. He had put out a post on LinkedIn looking for people that had some knowledge to share around the power of storytelling, and specifically as it relates to podcasting, because the core of the business that Mark runs through his company, Mark Savant Media, is a podcast production, education company, mastermind, post-production, all that kind of stuff. He's basically one of those guys that has been through the trenches, that has figured out all of the things that a person needs to do to actually start and launch and expand a podcast, expand your voice, expand your truth. And I personally am very, very much seeking out people like him. And I was so glad to come across that post that he put out. In fact, it was Danielle Grant that App mentioned me in the post. And he had me on his podcast just a couple of weeks ago, and it's all up and live. And it's just I got to witness what he does as his core genius in the business that he's built. And it's just really top notch. And I wanted to do the return favor of bringing him on my show and talking about, what brought him to this point? What is that messy journey that had him in the retail jobs and the corporate jobs, and just that feeling of, this isn't it. This is not the thing for me. I'm a creator. I'm somebody that's here to push the boundaries. And now he supports people to be able to share their voice, to be able to create their own podcast, but without all of the overwhelm. He's been through the mistakes so that you don't have to. And I could tell you from my own personal experience, and I talked about this on the podcast as well, a lot of times high achievers or people that have been in the digital marketing space, the online marketing space, like myself, we default to, I'll just go figure it out. Man, do I wish I would have met Mark before I started that journey, because I did figure it out, but it took me a lot of months to actually figure out, what should I use for a hosting platform? Should I do video and audio? What do I need for opening jingles? Where do I get music from? What should I say? What's the purpose of my podcast? What's the artwork going to look like? I want posters. What should they say on them? That's the second round of posters that I put on the wall. There's all these different things. And it's important to have somebody like Mark and the community that he's built on your side when you go down that path, because I truly believe that podcasting is the future and it's here right now. You have something to say, you want to create impact, you want to attract your perfect clients and or your people into your world. There's no better way than with a podcast. And I'm proof of it. I've just been a magnet to these incredible people like Mark Savant. So I want you to give this one a listen, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. All right, so let's go listen. All right, welcome, Mark Savant. So good to see you here again, brother. Looking forward to this chat.
Yo, Trevor, what up? Glad to be here.
Yes. Well, and you and I only got connected, like 3 weeks ago, but we are action takers, man. I jumped on a comment on a LinkedIn post. You hosted me on your podcast. I saw all these amazing clips and artwork and stuff done. And unfortunately, I got a little sick a couple weeks ago. Otherwise, this interview would have been done already and we probably would have it out. But we're here. We're making it happen, man.
It's truly the power of social media and LinkedIn specifically. And, I create a post, someone that knows me and knows you makes a post and says, Trevor Turnbull, you got to talk to him. He's awesome. And that's because you've built the authority, you built the empathy, you built the audience of people that trust you. And social media does get a bad name in some cases for good reason. But when you can bring people together like that, now Trevor and I know each other. Next time you're in South Florida, we're going to go wrangle some alligators.
There you go. All right. Yeah, we were just chatting off the recording here right before this, and Mark was telling me that he's off to a bachelor party here this afternoon. I was like, how much time you got? He said, well, I got a bachelor party in a couple hours, but other than that, what do people do in bachelor parties in Florida nowadays? Is it gator wrestling or something else?
There's a wide variety of experiences that you can have. As I'm in Broward County, so I'm pretty close to Miami. There's a lot of action in Fort Lauderdale, of course, but this is not one of those types of bachelor parties. We're going to go play some disc golf. We're going to go get some steak dinners. And then there's this like classic pinball arcade that we're going to hit up in Palm Beach County. So it should be pretty dope. Should be pretty fun.
Sweet. Yes. A person always just thinks, the headlines, Florida, man. And then what? Right? Yeah, always entertaining. But definitely, man, I can't wait to get down there. I know Florida's been kind of a beacon of hope almost in the last couple of years of people just going about living their lives, and especially now. And But anyways, we'll make that happen one of these days because we're heading down to the sunshine here ourselves pretty soon. So I'm sure Florida will be on that list and we'll definitely connect. But in the meantime,
no place is perfect, but when in 2020, when the pandemic was raging and you couldn't go into a restaurant in a lot of countries, some places in the world were getting, people were getting, locked into their homes. I was like, I'm at Chipotle. Like, I'm living my life. I'm going to the zoo with my family. I was like, I feel kind of like I hit the lottery living in Florida. Not perfect by any means.
No, for sure.
But I think that's an important thing too, Trevor. I think it's great for us as leaders, as entrepreneurs, to try to build a life that allows us to live where we want to live and to eat where we want to eat and be with people that we want to be with. Too many people are like, oh, well, when I'm 60, then I'll move to my dream country or dream state. Why not engineer a life that you can do that now? That's what I ask.
It's funny you say that, man, because I just published an episode today on my own podcast. It's the first time I've done a solo now in about 6 or 7 weeks. I'm planning on doing more of them here going forward. Yeah, they're so it's just like a release almost, right? It's healing, man. It's just invigorating. But I was speaking about why we're moving our family from Canada down to Costa Rica. And one of the things that I mentioned on that is exactly what you're saying is I made a choice 15 years ago to say that life is the one that I want, but not the kind where you go down to the all-inclusive and drink and eat your face off for a week and then realize like, man, I would die if I did this in real life, but just actually creating the routines and the habits, no matter where I live, and creating a business that allows me to pick up and leave and go anywhere. And we were joking about Elon Musk even before this about maybe creating a set of headphones that doesn't get all caught up in each other. But, he's putting satellites up in the air that's allowing for high-speed internet in the middle of the jungle, man. So there's never been a better time to actually build something that you can do remote, has there? And it really speaks to the power of podcasting. And I know we'll get into all of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it speaks to the unique time in history that we're in. I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in all the negative things that are happening, but there are so many amazing revolutionary technologies that are changing the world. Like you said, satellite internet, people in low-income countries in Africa being able to mine coins or create NFTs that allow them to provide food for their family. I mean, the world is changing really quickly, Trevor. And I think that's one of the problems that we as leaders can run into is that we become too comfortable. And I get this all the time when I'm working with coaches. A coach is like, hey, Mark, I'd like you to be part of my coaching program. I'm going to teach you how I built my Instagram 5 years ago. And I start scratching my head. I'm like, what worked 5 years ago doesn't work now, let alone in 5 years.
Yeah. Or even 5 months ago, with the pace of technology and how quickly it's going. I think what you're speaking to there is, your mentors and guides and coaches and the people that are creating communities and masterminds, they better be doing it too. Otherwise, there's a massive incongruency there. There's a lack of integrity that people are just trying to make money, right? And that's what I really respect about what you got going on, man, is you're producing your own podcast, you're supporting other people to do the same, and you're creating community to actually connect those people, knowing that in this amazing virtual world, yes, we can connect remotely. I did a cold plunge in the river the other day, and we had a buddy from Edmonton, Alberta, 1,000 miles away from us that did it at the same time, and we streamed the whole thing. How cool is that, But
that's cold.
It's cold. It's cool. And it's cold.
That's cool.
Yeah. But there's something about just being around your people though, too. And whether that's virtually or in person. So we'll dig into all of that and what you've built, in your business and your communities and whatnot. But before we do, really quick.
Well, walking the walk, I just want to say that walking the walk portion, I think is so important. I really take that to heart. In the podcast mastermind that I run, it's not just me teaching everyone what to do and then I go and I drink a beer on my porch. I'm in the weeds too. It's, hey, for this month, we're going to take 30 minutes a week and we're going to work on our show. We're going to work on our skills. We're going to make our show more findable. And, working through those worksheets has really helped me to elevate my own game, So at any rate, to your point, walk the walk. You know, there's too many people talking, not enough walking. You know, you got to get out there and you got to do it. You got to take that cold plunge.
Absolutely, man. And that's how we got connected ultimately, right? You put something out saying, hey, you know, this month is about storytelling. Let's all improve our skill set on how we can tell better stories. And, you know, a contact of mine jumped in, mentioned me. I jumped in there. Next thing you know, we're on a chat and I'm able to say out loud the things that I've learned, knowing that, like, I'm not the go-to guru expert on how to be the most authentic version of yourself and create killer storytelling content, but I got some experience there, you know, like, and I've ran into the challenges of trying to do it the opposite way. So yeah, it's just, you just got to put yourself out there, be the student as well, right? That's, I think a lot of times people in this online space, they get to a point where they think, well, now I'm the coach. I don't have to keep leveling up, but it's quite the opposite, isn't it? Like, you got to always be finding your tribe. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we'll get into that too, like finding out like, where's your people, you know, like outside of your own community, but and I'm making mental notes on all of these. I'm going to come back to them. But really quickly here, I want to say, so one of the things that at the start of my podcast that I always say out loud, because it just kind of grounds us in the conversation, is Brene Brown has a quote where she says, one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it will be somebody else's survival guide. So I want to dig into that and ground us in that, man, because I know you've got a pretty grounded why yourself too, and it's available publicly. I'll link it up for everybody on your about page, but do you want to maybe speak out loud about that, what's brought you to this point, and then we'll just kind of dance from there, man.
Ooh, big question, but I've been an employee my whole life, right? An employee my whole life. I'm 39 now, and you know, it's kind of funny when you hit a certain point in your life and you start to look back you're like, life leaves clues, and there's different clues that happen along the course of your life. And, you know, it seems like when you're in it, when you're living it, you don't totally understand it. But you know, like I remember when I was in Little League, not getting a chance to hit when I should have been hitting. I was one of the better players on my team, but the coach didn't like me, so I didn't get to play. I was the employee, right? I didn't actually create my own destiny. In college, side job, working at Best Buy, fun job, by the way. And I wanted to move up. I didn't want to just be a floor person making minimum wage. I wanted to move up. I wanted to build my resume, and I went to the manager of the store, not the manager, but the supervisors, right? Didn't go to so I'm talking to them. I said, what can I do? How can I move up in the ranks? How can I get more responsibility, more cash, more pay? And they said, you know, we want you to work these hours. We need someone to run our volunteer program. Why don't you start and be a part of the volunteer? We want you to be part of this mentorship program. I did everything that they asked, Trevor. And when it came time, when those positions started to open up, I got passed over time and time and time again. And they would bring in these people from other stores that were just like doofuses. And I recognized this because they were afraid that I wasn't playing the politics game. You know, I was the best one for the job, I was the best one for the business, but I didn't play the politics game. And so again, passed up. And time again, I think that I just didn't take the reins. I didn't take that leap. I didn't take that cold plunge into the river.
There you go. Good analogy. I like that one.
But For me, it was kids. You know, having my daughter was a real crux in my life, and it lit a fire under me. And I wish that fire would have been lit a decade ago, but it wasn't. That's not the way that life works. And now I'm starting to see the time freedom, the monetary freedom to make my own decisions, to not be held hostage by an employer. And it's a special time. It's a hard work, very hard work. But there's something about that.
Yeah, I think many entrepreneurs, high achievers that have a very similar story. Because as you were saying all that, I was like, yeah, me too, man. You know, I worked at GNC, General Nutrition Center, when I was in university because I thought I should go get a degree. You know, all these decisions that we make along the way. And
we talk about
there was never.
I'm sorry, but we talked about complacency earlier, right? And as a leader, in this time, you can't be complacent, but it's so easy to be complacent and my bills are paid. Life is pretty good, you know, but is that it?
Yeah. And I was, just picking up on that, I was going to say that there's never one particular thing a lot of times with the entrepreneurs that I talk to where they're like, this was the moment. And I knew that would be, it was like a series of events, and for you, it was like Little League, right? For me, there was hockey stuff related there. I had coaches where I knew I was better than that guy, but I wasn't getting the ice time because of the politics. And at the time I was just frustrated, but then it kind of fueled the drive to go, okay, nobody will ever decide my destiny in this world. And then we seek this journey to try and figure that out. And then I don't know about you, but one thing that I've found, and this is a bit of you want to call it like an entrepreneurial disease, is that when we're high achievers and we're pushing to go and create our own destiny, a lot of times there's a deep down like worthiness almost that we have to address at one point. Like, you are enough, that boss that didn't give you that promotion, forget about that guy. Forget about that gal. You got this. And then it becomes the inner work game, right? The technology and the tactics and all of that stuff, even with what you do with the podcasting, there's a lot of people that do the same thing, right? What is that work played into your business and even how you support people right now? We're kind of dancing in a different direction here, but I'm just curious, man, like how that's played a part in your own growth along the way.
Well, I mean, the podcast itself, getting into podcasting was life-changing for a lot of reasons. Again, life leaves clues. And I remember back to my college days, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was presenting to the class, right? So I would get up on stage, you get your heart is fluttering, your arms are shaking, you're nervous, but then you present, and you're like, you start to feel alive, right? And after I graduated, I went into working for my father's insurance agency, and there was none of that. It was sitting in front of, it was safe. It was so safe. And it was stifling, right? But at a certain point, I recognized that I need to do something. I need to start taking action. I need to take my destiny into my own hands. This is safe, but is this all that life can give me? And I said, no, there's definitely something more. And so I started trying all these different businesses. I started looking to open up my own agency. I looked into vending machines, real estate. I looked into selling mattresses, Amazon FBA, the list goes on, dozen different ideas. But what I recognized was that I was learning so much from podcasts. I was getting so much useful information. I said, why don't I just start my own? And then as I did that, I recognized that, there's something here. And just not to kind of drone on here, but my first show was called The Awesome Dad Show. It married my passion for podcasting and the opportunities that presented, but it also brought together fatherhood and parenting. And what I recognized, Trevor, was going into the project as I started to produce, nobody was paying me to teach them how to be a better father. People were paying me to help them launch their own podcast. People were paying me to help them grow their own social media profiles. And so when you start to develop a business, you have to develop a business that solves a problem. And so when I was able to marry something that I was passionate about, I believed in, and that it is the future of communication, along with something that solves a problem for people, it was like a perfect marriage. It was perfect harmony.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, and I know we talked about, actually, let me just grab this book here real quick. I should have had this a little closer to me. There we go. I got it. I had a friend give me this book the other day. Tell Me Your Life Story, Dad. And there's a whole series of these, right? Like Mom and Grandpa and all that kind of stuff. And they're just prompting questions to leave behind something, a legacy, right? And to make sure that those stories don't get lost. And, just looking at your About page, I'm staring at it right now. You told a story about your grandfather, and that was a grounding piece of your why. And it was very similar, very tied to this, wasn't it? Do you want to maybe speak out loud about that? And because that's the big thing. Is this your daughter that's on the photo here as well?
I think that's my son on that photo. I'm not sure exactly what, but okay. I've got a 3-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter. And a few years ago, when I was early into my journey, but I wasn't sure on anything, I was visiting my grandfather and my grandmother up in Central Florida. Went to their retirement home, whatnot, went up, and while my daughter, she was very tiny at the time, was playing with my grandma and my wife, my grandfather pulled me over and said, "Hey, Mark, I want to talk to you for a minute." And, he's in his 90s, health not great. And he opens up this old red leather bound book, and he starts flipping through the pages of this book, and there's photos of him when he was just a very, very small, newspaper clippings, again, photos when he was like coaching basketball and visiting these different places. It's basically his memoirs, like his life in a snapshot. And I had this kind of aha moment where I said, one day I'm going to be sitting in that chair and I'm going to be explaining my life and my legacy to my daughter's kids, to my grandkids. And I was like, what is that book going to look like right now? It's going to look like, well, I was, a pretty top level character in World of Warcraft, or, I played it safe at my insurance agency, or, went to, that's not the story that I wanted to tell. And so I really aggressively was taking action to figure things out. And that's how the After Hours Entrepreneur was born. The name of my podcast, The After Hours Entrepreneur, because I was working the 9 to 5. And then in my after hours, I was putting in work. I won't bore you, but thousands and thousands and thousands of hours trying to figure it out. People, I think, always try to oversell how easy it is to sell a business, to build a business, because I think that's what people are looking for. People want the easy. But I don't think that that's the way that it works, man. It's not obvious. It's not obvious the path that you need to take.
And it evolves so quickly too, right? Like like you said, the technology of 5 months ago, 5 years ago. I just think of even this platform that we're on right now, and then tools like Descript to be able to do post-production editing of your podcast. Like that did not exist 5-6 months ago, Descript at the level of quality that it was. And we think that, no, it's been like this for 5 years. It's like, no, this has been 5 months where you now have that tool. And there's something else coming behind it that's going to be just as cool and improve the efficiencies. But regardless of the...
I remember...
go ahead and riff on that,
I remember delivering pizzas, and there was no GPS.
Yeah.
I had to look at the map and memorize the route that I was going to take.
How did we even survive back then?
I have no freaking clue.
Oh, man.
No.
And speaking of dads, that's where the ultimate kind of dad joke comes from too, is, we don't ask for directions. And back in the day, you kind of had to, or you were taking the long way home if you even found your way home.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago, man.
Or if you didn't, you went to the wrong movie theater or something, or the wrong restaurant, you didn't know where your friends were, and you're like,
hey, you couldn't call them.
Payphone?
Yeah.
Maybe on a payphone you could.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And people underestimate this all the time, is how powerful this computer is in your hand that you take with you everywhere. It's so powerful. And people are confused. They're not leveraging it in the way that they need to, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube channel or an Instagram live show or a LinkedIn DM campaign. It's so powerful. And once you work with someone like yourself, once you get clear and you have a lane to stick to and someone to kind of help guide you to that lane, it's just so powerful. It's so powerful. I can't sing in it.
Yeah, man. And I know you help people with this. And to the point we were making earlier and you've been through it and you're in the trenches. The thing that comes to mind here is, so you had this awesome dad show. How long ago was that? How many years ago was that?
I started it, again, about 4 or 5 years ago. You can still listen to it. There's about 100 episodes and it's still live. You could listen to it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. In fact, I just hit 15, I don't know. I just hit a milestone on YouTube. It's on YouTube. You can still watch it on YouTube. People still watch it and comment to this day.
Yep. And then it evolved into the After Hours Entrepreneur. I guess where I'm going with this, and the question I want to ask is, when you work with clients, the Awesome Dad Show is probably a personal passion project, right? It's like, you're a dad. I want to figure out how to do this dad thing better. Why don't I just go interview people and see if I can learn some stuff, right? And then ultimately, if you can help solve a problem through the conversations, okay, so now you can maybe wrap a business around it. And then comes the After Hours Entrepreneur. So you've got this story about your grandpa and these, this deep rooted, like, I want to be able to tell the story and I want to be able to create some impact. Like, that's a 4-year kind of cycle to get to here where we are right now. When you work with people, What do you advise them to do? Do you advise them to like, man, you got to find your why and your purpose and that thing before you even start? Or is it, no, man, if you're passionate because you're a dad and you want to figure out some stuff, just start that. Like, what's the approach you typically take when you're working with people on that? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, well, it does. And the answer is it depends. Because everybody is starting a podcast for different reason. And I'll tell you, that is the most important thing, is deciding why you're starting a podcast in the first place, right? Is it because I want a way to get potential clients on the line? Is it because I want to have some sort of social impact? Is it because I want to build a large listenership? What is the reason? And I definitely think, Trevor, that there has to be some sort of financial motivation to it. I all the time people are like, oh, I just want to inspire people. That's not a good reason to start a podcast, in my opinion. The reason is because it's a lot of work. And it's going to cost money. It costs money for the hosting, for the recording, for the editing. It costs real cash. And if you have no way of monetizing it, or if you haven't thought through that on the front end, it is probably not going to be sustainable. So, the first thing that I go through with either with new clients or new mastermind members is going through a brand identity guide and getting serious and asking yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I speaking to? Right. And what is my desired goal? Like, these types of core questions end up leading you to what type of show you should be producing, because it's not always obvious.
For sure. And I think you're proof that you can pivot. You can have something that inspires you a year in, 2 years in, that allows you to just kind of make a lateral move as opposed to even a dramatic one. Just getting started a lot of times is the first hurdle that people need to get over. And most of the time that's rooted in self-worth. A lot of times, who am I to have this podcast? And I'm not the go-to expert on this subject or whatever it is. And I don't know if anybody is on any subject. Everybody's got their own experiences and whatnot. But how much of that do you run into when you first start working with people? Is there a lot of hesitancy and fear around that imposter syndrome and that type of thing?
There definitely can be. But again, I think a lot of that's rooted in not fully understanding why they're doing it and what they want their impact to be. I think a lot of it comes from that. Generally, I think the thing that holds people back is the technical aspect. It's not overly complicated, but you don't know what you don't know.
Totally.
In that perfection paralysis is stifling when you're looking at, when you're looking at a launch kit and you're like, I have to do all of this. It's, you get this paralysis by analysis when, to your point, sometimes you just got to dive in. The problem with just diving in and just taking the action is you can do it the long, hard, painful way that I went through with
yeah, man,
dark, dank, long hours of editing and trying to figure out how to automate things. Or you can find ways to expedite it and move more quickly, which is the problem that I solve. Is let's take out the complexity. We're going to ask the questions. We're going to do it together. I'm going to help you take care of all the technical stuff, and we're going to get you launched quickly, professionally, and give you a plan to actually grow it and make sure that you can generate some income off it. Because if there's no income generation, it just not sustainable.
Yeah, it fizzles out. And that you mentioned to me earlier, that's the podcast launch kit. That's kind of like the all-in-one, let's get you up and running in 6 weeks kind of deal, right? That's what you do to support people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Podcast launch kit. It's just, you have to be willing to work because you're the talent, but I work with clients hand in hand. Some clients need more help than others, and we get it done and we make it work, and you get your voice heard. And it's incredibly, a podcast is just so incredibly powerful for either building your personal brand or generating clients. One of the things I think that's also interesting too, is I get clients from the after hours or from the Awesome Dad Show, right? It has nothing to do with entrepreneurship or with podcasting or generating income. But what ends up happening, Trevor, is when you have an asset online, you see this all the time. A realtor will be out and all they do is post pictures of the home they're trying to sell. Nobody cares. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. Podcasters do this too. They'll post their podcast up and say, listen to my new episode. It's going to be, I interview John Smith. Listen to it. nobody cares. You have to try to position your personal brand. You have to position your stuff in a way that makes people interested, because people make decisions based on emotion. They don't base it off of these simple 1, 2, 3. So anyway, that's something that I learned the hard way also. And, putting out things that you're actually interested in, they might have no correlation to what you're selling, but people will see, oh, Mark's a dad. I'm a dad. I'm very interested in it. Fatherlessness is a problem. Let me connect with Mark, and it can kind of have this spiderweb effect.
Yeah, man. And I know we were talking about this before we hopped on, because you interviewed me, and within probably a couple weeks type thing, you guys had that episode up and running. And I know what that takes on my end too, because when I do episodes, if I get ahead on a lot of interviews, I end up with like 8 to 10 backed up, and then my publishing schedule, you know what I mean? So like, I have a lot of respect for people that like do the interview and within a couple of weeks it's up, but not just up, also well executed in the way where you like pull a clip. And I know you've got an artist that does some cool like caricature kind of stuff, and it just stands out. Those little tiny things make a huge difference. And I think the thing that comes to mind here, going back to what you were saying, is that's one modality to be able to promote your podcast. So you got this full interview that was killer. Like, I loved our conversation, but you pulled out these like 2 or 3 things, and you created this graphic and you put it on these platforms. The truth is that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of options of what we could do. We can make it a 9:16 video. We can make it a 1:1 video. We can put it on TikTok. Having somebody there to go, no, been down that path. Just please follow this roadmap, follow this kit, do these things, is so valuable. And this is coming from somebody too that is the prototypical, I'll go figure it out. When I first started my podcast, or started the idea of it about 1.5 years ago, I dove into it, and I'm very technically savvy, man. And I hit roadblocks where I was like, what in the hell? Like, how do you host this damn thing? You know? And then you Google it, and you're like, holy shit, there's like 40 different hosting companies. Which one should I choose? And then you Google that. Like, that path.
Right.
Man, like how
and it's always changing too.
Always changing.
As soon as you have your formatting figured out, the algorithms change, and then you're like, okay, I got to reformat it. It's exhausting. Like right now, as of April of 22, Reels are super hot. So you want to be on Reels. You want to be on short form. That's not going to stay. Reels used to be 15 seconds. Then it was 30 seconds. Then it was 60 seconds. And it's like, what kind of hashtag should I, it's pretty exhausting. So, that's really part of what me and my team do, is we're in the trenches. So you don't have to be, we make it easy. And, that to that point, sometimes I'll run into clients who are like, well, Mark, I can see that producing my show with you per month would be, let's say, $1,000 based on all the things that they need, but I can get it over here for 600. And I'm like, that's true, but I don't want to put my stamp on that type of final product. You can play the milquetoast game. That's cool. But I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that if I'm working with someone, we've actually got a result in mind. Which, again, that's just the way I play it, because there's so many options out there. You have to know who you talk to, the problems you solve, and stick to your gun.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring you on my podcast too, was obviously to just tell your story, because I think a lot of people relate to it. I relate to it, man. Like, I feel like what my podcast has done is attract the kind of people that I would hang out with and go do cool arcade games and, do the golfing stuff in Florida, Like, I truly believe that, man. And that, to me, like, there's a deep rooted, that's all I want to do, man. I just want to hang out with people that inspire me, that have good want to have good conversations, that want to challenge the status quo, but also want to be very grounded in the presence of, we're fathers, we're husbands, we're here to make the world better, not just to make money. And that actually speaks to the other side, because I think a lot of what we're referring to right now is the power of your tribe, your community. And I know you got a mastermind too. Let's talk about that, because the podcast launch kit is the manual. It's like, here's the worksheets. This is what you need to do. Let's get you up and running. All this other stuff that we're talking about, the reel links and all of that, like, you'd be constantly updating that product, that podcast launch kit, if you try to keep up with all this stuff. Is that the purpose of the mastermind? Is just like connect people, come up with ideas on how to just improve reach and engagement and that type of thing? Maybe speak about that.
Yeah, well, so I'm a problem solver, and I recognized that I was having a lot of conversations with people that wanted to work with me, but they couldn't afford, a $2,500 launch kit. They couldn't afford $800 a month for production. And so I was just leaving a lot of people unserved. People were going home thinking, well, Mark can't help me. And I didn't like that. So I said, what's a way that I can really serve the podcast audience, the audience of my listeners, and make it manageable? So I launched this group coaching program, which is only $25 a month to start. At least it is right now. And then to join the actual mastermind portion, which is another $25. So it's $50 a month. And, you're able to really kind of get in the weeds in your own show with support from other people, to have some guidance on how you can adopt and adapt and improve. And it's been really powerful. It just keeps growing. People keep joining it. And, from a business standpoint, I was going to talk about this too for just a second. It's been really important in my business, because when you're in a services business, there's a little bit of feast or famine. Some months you're launching 3 podcasts like I am now. Some months you're launching 0 podcasts. And so, by having a group of people that are invested, they're buying in, they're involved each month in your mastermind, it creates cash flow. So now all of a sudden you've got a cash flow. You've kind of spread out your risk a bit. The other advantage, and you know this as well as I do, Trevor, the first dollar that you get from someone is the hardest dollar you will ever get from them. Okay. So if you get someone into your ecosystem at an inexpensive price point, it becomes much easier to get them to buy other products and services from you in the future. It becomes much easier for them to dive into your content on a deeper level. It gets you closer to building your 1,000 true fans. So, frankly, I think that every coach, anyone in the service industry, I think everyone should be considering or looking into, how can I leverage a podcast and a paid community to try to alleviate some of these problems? It's a lot of work. And at my price point, sometimes people are like, Mark, you're giving too much for too little. But I'm playing the long game, because now the people that are in there, some of them pay for services. Some of them end up, buying affiliate products that I recommend. I'm getting more engagement and more downloads on my podcast. So it all kind of, it grows from the inside out. And that was a big shift in my mindset.
Yeah, I love that, man. And, I know my purpose here, and this is constantly evolving, but I'm able to wrap words around it a little bit better every single day. There's something else that pops up of like, yeah, that's how I can say it. But it's really to amplify the voices of the change makers of the world. And I know that I can do that by just showing up, just like you are as well. Let me just show up. Let me go lead by example. It's going to be messy and ugly and uncomfortable, but shit, who else is going to do it unless I do it? But then also knowing, this has been a common theme of what we're talking about here too, is like, I can't help all these people. I haven't built what you've built. You've been in the trenches on things that, I don't even know about. Or maybe there is things where I've maybe gone deeper, but I haven't made it my focus and purpose. And what I love about what you're doing, and what I want everybody listening to this to understand, is podcasting, in my opinion, is the number one way to be able to build that freedom life that you're looking for. End of story. And you should not try and go figure it out by yourself. You should work with somebody. You should get into these communities. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, man, is I feel like you're a piece of that puzzle for me. Like, if I want to create the massive impact that I'm looking for, I need to align myself with people like you, man, that can support those voices, because there's a lot of them. Everybody's just really suppressed and fearful right now, but podcasting is the way. It really is, especially with the way that mistrust of mainstream media and everything is going right now. It is the way. And you can quote me on that one. And you need to reach out to a guy like Mark to get the support.
Yeah. You have to have some place where your long form content can live in perpetuity. Like I said, I made a video on YouTube a few years ago. I still get paid from it every week. People listen to a podcast that I produced 3 years ago. They still hit me up. So your general strategy needs to be somewhere where you've got long form content like a podcast, somewhere where you've got short form highly engageable content like an Instagram or a LinkedIn, because together you're able to really serve an audience. And a lot of people are, a lot of people are taking advantage of it. And if you're not now, because it's possible now. It might not be possible to do this in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right now you can actually do it. You can actually have a podcast. You can grow it. You can grow a community. In 5 years, it might not be possible. It wasn't really possible a couple decades ago. This is a unique time. People have it twisted. People don't. Oh, it makes me just, that's
why we're here, man.
People don't get how important now is.
That's why we're here. Yeah. And actually, it just brought up another question that I have for you too, because I know that the post-production that you did on our interview and the clips and whatnot that I've seen you put up online, it's not a small investment. Like, there's time, there's money involved in that. You got to pay a designer. You got to chop these things up. You got to push it out. That takes time to just do it. One of the things that I'm just trying to find ways to improve this is I'm doing the same thing. Like, I'm going deep, man. I'm doing 5 topic videos and social clips and creating quote graphics, and we're making sure that the quality is really good. And then, some guests, I'll give it to them and they just run with it, man. They're like, amazing. And they'll throw it into their own production schedule, like their distribution schedule, and they're sharing things, and it's in their evergreen system and their emails. And others, you don't even hear from them. They're just like, cool. Do people realize the amount of effort and time? Like, your stuff that you gave to me, that's going in my system, man. Because this is an evergreen conversation that we have had. It wasn't just March, April conversation. This is going to be relevant in 2 years, and people on my email list will be seeing those things when they come in. How do you motivate your guests, man, to share your stuff? What have you found?
So I think empathy is important too. So if you flip it to the other side, I think sometimes as podcast host, we forget that person that's a guest, they've got a million things going on too. They have their own systems. They have their own team. They're not just sitting there waiting like, when is Mark going to send me all my clips? That's not how it works. And what we end up doing is we convolute our system. We add too many emails, too many messages. We'll send them too much stuff to share. Here's a link to YouTube. And also make sure that they log in on iTunes, but there's Spotify too, Oh, by the way, here's 10 different clips from the show with 5 different images. Make sure you share them on Instagram, because you got to make it simple. We got to make it simple, because overwhelming with people with too much information is way too complicated. So really what I've kind of dropped down to is I'll send a client 1 or 2 clips with the expectation that they're not going to share them. Most people don't share. But what you want to do is make it as easy as possible. So post something on Instagram story and tag them. Right now, Instagram Reels that's the cash cow right now. So you post an Instagram Reel and you invite the other person to collaborate with you. So I did this with you. I'm not sure if you accept it or not, because it's hard for me to keep track. But what I'll do is I'll post a reel and I'll invite you to collaborate. And if you say yes, now all of a sudden it's not just shared in my grid, it's shared in your grid also with all of your fans.
See, I'm still a newbie on the Instagram side of things. I resisted it forever. And then now recently I'm like, okay, I'll get into it. But I haven't figured that out. But to your point, but
what you did do is you did share on LinkedIn. I tagged you. You shared it with your community on LinkedIn. Super simple.
Yeah. You're going to have to follow up with me on that Instagram one, though, because I think I know what you're talking about. Like, my wife created a post the other day, and then she said, let's collaborate on it. And then it showed up on my wall as well. And now both of our audiences are seeing that and engaging on it and commenting on it. That's a great tip. That's great. So, yeah, please follow up with me on that one, because I probably just dropped the ball on that.
It happens. But, and again, I have no expectation that a guest is just going to share like crazy, because that doesn't always happen. When it does happen, it's awesome, and you get to get in front of a lot of new eyeballs. But, like I said, we have to understand that we want to make it as easy. We want to make it as frictionless as possible for people to share our work. Or to get signed up. Everything needs to be as frictionless as possible. If I have to click 3 buttons, I'm out. If I only have to click 1 button, I might be in.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a great point, man. And actually, I had a revelation here right now based on how our conversation has gone around. Like, we need to be the example. We can't expect our clients to do what we tell them to do if we're not doing it as well. And I made the conscious decision a couple of weeks ago to think, I'm getting interviewed on quite a few podcasts right now because I'm showing up and sharing a different side of, my story and my truth. And I think I've got like 7 or 8 interviews in the last couple of months, and now they're starting to back up. And I was like, man, if I want people to share my shit, I better go share theirs. I have to be the example. So I have it to do. I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, okay, this is happening this afternoon. I need to put Mark's stuff into my follow-up sequence and my distribution strategy. I got Brian Panuzzo who interviewed me. That was a great interview. Totally different kind of spin, Just got to make the time for it. Be the example. And I love that advice, though, of just keep it simple. Because I think that's maybe where I've been guilty of it is we go and create all these amazing assets and we go, here you go. And it's like 7 videos and 15 quote graphics. And they're like, this is awesome. But like, dude, I don't got time to set all this up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One video, one image. And even then, the best thing to do is just make sure that you tag that person properly and let them, and just send them a DM and say, hey, I just tagged you on LinkedIn. If you could share this, that would be awesome. That's easy. It takes me 2 clicks and then I could type a quick thing. This is a great interview,
well, and I am noticing that.
Just always.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I am noticing that too, because, the volume of quote graphics that we're creating now, I'm publishing them on a daily basis, sometimes like 2 a day type thing. And we're making sure that we're mentioning the guests, and not all of them are jumping on it and sharing it in their reels and that type of thing. But some of them are, man. And you can tell that they really appreciate the effort that went into creating that, because it's their voice, right? Like, it's me investing time and money to create something that actually benefits them. So the ones that get it, they're like, this is amazing, and they'll put it out. So yeah, sure.
I mean, it's a collaboration. Yeah. It's a collaboration. It's like if you and someone worked on a project and then you win an award and you go up on stage and like, I'm going to make sure that I recognize that Trevor was part of this project. If I was just like, thank you for this reward, I did it all on my own, nobody else helped me, F you, and walked off stage, it's just kind of like a slap in the face. Like, I took time, I took money to help promote you with my entire audience, and you can't just hit the retweet button. That's not a way. You're completely missing the point of the guest opportunity when you do that. Now, at the same time, some podcast hosts have a completely unrealistic expectation of what you're going to do. They'll say, like, again, you got to be realistic, but at the same time, being respectful and making sure that you promote, because that's what the relationship's about. I really believe that.
This last part of this chat has been super helpful for me, man. I'm going to have to start diving into more of these strategies and I think it speaks well to anybody that's watching this too. When you think about starting a podcast, it starts with, well, what's it going to be about? What's the name of it? Do I need show art? Which platform should I put it? That's the early stages. The best answer is like, well, use some good resources, just start, allow it to adapt over time. But then eventually you get to this place where you're like, how do I expand the reach of this? How do I get more people to see and hear this? How do I create better collaborations with my guests? And I'm just saying that out loud because I'm grateful to be at that stage. But it's awesome, man. But I had to start, right? I had to start last August. And people do get hung up on that. They start thinking about all that stuff. And you're like, you're not even close to being there yet. Just go back here, Start with why. Let's start with why. Let's figure out how you're going to monetize this, whatever that looks like, and then start moving in that direction. Find your guides, find your mentors, join these programs. We'll link all this stuff up, of course, man. I just got one other question for you here. And then if there's anything else you want to riff on though, too, because a lot of times guests will have something like, I really want to say this out loud, but I like to ask this question, man. What's one thing that you're most grateful for right now?
So much. There's so much to be grateful for. I think I have so much to be grateful for, but I think that my direct immediate family, wife and kids, I'm so blessed. I recognize how special it is to have a marriage that's lasted for 8 years, a relationship that's been over 15, to have 2 kids that are healthy and happy and talented. Life is a wild card. Tomorrow is not promised. And anything can happen. It's, health can happen, money can happen, relationships can go bad. You can make a mistake, you know, and I just feel very grateful that I'm in a place where that's working. And you know what? I want to add on to that. I am so grateful that I wake up on Mondays energized and excited.
Love that.
That I spent years hating Mondays. And then Friday,
right?
Woohoo! Yes. Yeah. That is if that's the way you're living, something is broken. It is broken. It is busted, because now I'm like, it's Friday. Crap. I didn't get enough done during the week. There was so much I left on the table. And that was, you know, for decades, I did not live that way. So that, I mean, being able to wake up energized and excited about Monday, there's nothing better, man.
100%, man. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And yeah, I'm grateful for the fact that we got connected. And of course we did, but it had to take committed action as well, and maybe dropping some stories. Cause I know for me, just the last like 4 or 5 months, I kind of stayed away from social a bit. There was just an exhaustion of it, of like, man, you know, like I'm just kind of done. I'm ready to just kind of be over here and be the attractor. But then there was a part of me that was seeing things in conversations, you know, like your post that came up and Danielle tagged me, and I obviously respect her a lot, and she wouldn't have tagged me into a post if she didn't see the opportunity of a great connection. So I'm grateful for the fact that I take committed action towards things that just feel right. And when I do, it puts me in this position to be having conversations like this and being able to be that connector for somebody who has a voice in this world to create the change of that beautiful world that I see that exists for my kids, and the one world I get to live in with them. And I see you as one of those people, man. So I'm grateful that we got a chance to connect here. And maybe just explain to everybody how they can find out more about you, connect with you, find out about the podcast, starter kit, the mastermind, all that stuff. Give us the links, man.
Oh, yeah. So this is another mistake people make when they're guesting on shows. They say, well, follow me here and make sure you don't forget me here. And by the way, this is my other podcast. Listen, if you go to anywhere, whether it's Google, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Mark Savant Media, just type in Mark Savant Media, shoot me a message, and I would love to engage. I'm everywhere at Mark Savant Media.
Perfect. Yeah. And I will link that up for everybody just to make it even easier, even though Google is quite easy. Just go type the name in. And that's not a hard name to spell. But yeah, I'll make sure people can get connected to you, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And we'll be talking more, I have no doubt, because I'm going to be firing some people over your way that have those messages to share and need that support and community that you built. So thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Trevor. I'm, grateful for our connection, brother. I'll see you in Florida soon.
Absolutely.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform, and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.